Content warning. This episode contains conversations about birth trauma and loss.
Welcome to the Mental Health and You podcast. This podcast brings you information and advice from across the Norfolk and Suffolk NHS Foundation Trust, with a range of teams, services and those who use them sharing their experiences and wisdom with us every fortnight.
Welcome to our first ever podcast for Mental Health and You. My name's Kelly. I work over the perinatal services at the Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust as a people participation coordinator. So I'm really excited today to chat about our services on our first sort of podcast for perinatal. And I'm joined with me, the lovely peer support worker, Bernie. So Bernie, welcome. Let's start from the beginning. You work for Lotus. It's a relatively new service. Can you tell me a little bit about the team and what you do?
Yeah, so hello everybody that's listening. I am Bernie, as Kelly said, one of the peer support workers in the Lotus team. I've been with the team since early 2021, not long after the team was first set up. I joined. We are a service that offers support to people who there's three pathways that we have. So there's either you might have experienced birth trauma, and related to that, you may also be struggling with something called tocophobia, which is a fear of pregnancy and or birth. And that, like I said, can be related to birth trauma, but it may be that you have what's known as primary tocophobia. So you've never had a birth experience, but you still have an intense fear of pregnancy and birth. We also support people who have lost babies, either through miscarriage or neonatal death or termination for various reasons. And we also support people whose children are no longer resident with them. So children that have gone into the care system through social services input. Yeah, and so that's our overarching, that's what our team does, and we work alongside various other teams, but alongside perinatal, mainly the perinatal team. And as a peer support worker, what I would be offering you is, if I was working with you, is a safe space to maybe share how you're feeling, what's happening for you, somewhere that you can know that you've got somebody who's actually just going to be listening to you. I'm not necessarily going to be offering you any particular type of input. For peer support, it's very individual. The support is very individual. It very much depends on what the person that we're supporting wants support with. But I would actively be looking at what your strengths might be, things that you like to do, things that keep you well, looking at things that you've done before that have made you feel like you've got purpose in your life, at a time when you might be really feeling like you don't know what your purpose is at the moment. And we might also support with things like we might have some strategies to help you with your kind of emotional and physical well-being. So we might be talking to you about maybe some grounding exercises, some mindfulness. Yeah, just kind of helping you kind of look at yourself as a whole, look at who you were maybe before you became unwell, and where you want to be, and what we could do to help support you to get there. Maybe looking at what might be some of the barriers to you getting better, and trying to help you to come up with your own solutions about how you can help yourself. And obviously, as a peer support worker, we have our own lived experience of mental health challenges, particularly in the perinatal period, just because that's the team, that's what I work in, so that was a requirement. And yeah, so I might also share some of my experience, and that can be quite validating for people to have somebody say that, you know, they might not necessarily have gone through the same thing, but actually may have experienced lots of similar emotions and feelings, and kind of hope that seeing me working and actually living alongside whatever has happened to me and how that's affected me could really show somebody that the potential is there, that they can get better and they can recover. You can live a life alongside whatever it was that's happened to you. You can get better. So yeah, that's what, in a nutshell, what we would do.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing service, Bernie, isn't it? And like we've mentioned, it's relatively new, isn't it? Back in 2021, I want to say, isn't it, when it
Yeah.
first sort of started here in Norfolk. Going back to some of the sort of coping strategies and things, because it's quite a unique service, Lotus, because it's a psychological sort of led service, isn't it, alongside yourselves as peer support workers. Are there any interventions that you use while people are sort of receiving a service from Lotus? So do you run sort of any groups or anything?
Yeah, so like you said, we're a kind of multidisciplinary team. So there are peer support workers, there are psychologists in our team, there are midwives, specialist midwives in our team, and also mental health wellbeing practitioner as well. So we've got various people offering various different things. So obviously one-to-one therapy with our therapists is something that our team offers, and the midwives are offering obviously antenatal and postnatal support. So yes, we have groups that we run. There are various different groups that we've run. We've run parenting after loss groups, and we've also just recently run and are about to start another perinatal loss group. And as a peer support worker, I would help facilitate those and support those people that are coming along to those groups. We've got webinars that people can watch. So our midwives have created a webinar to help with anxiety. We've got birth trauma stabilisation groups that we run. Yeah, there's various groups, various ideas for groups that we've got that we want to do and set up. So yeah, we do.
No, it sounds amazing. And I suppose, thinking of my own experience of, joining the trust, I started like yourself as a peer support worker. And I find that, as a parent myself, it was really, really important for me to, I suppose, somewhat find my tribe, especially when I was struggling myself. But then looking at what is around your sort of local community and sort of finding out, if there's any groups or any other local organisations for when, your time receiving support from a mental health service that sort of naturally comes to an end. And, is it obviously, because you've got your 3 pathways, is there any particular organisations that locally that you link up with to, sort of help with that sort of transition out of a service at all?
Yeah, we do. We work alongside quite a few local organisations, and I would encourage anyone that I'm supporting to kind of have a look what's out there, what's available, because like you said, through my own personal experience, that's how I found my tribe, if you like. I found the people that had experienced something similar to me. So yeah, we do those other organisations are really important, and we work alongside quite a few. So Mind, we obviously work alongside Mind, and we signpost people to them. The ECFS, so the Early Childhood Family Service, we use their services quite a lot. We look into that. They have a lot of information around what's happening in your local community, especially if you've got children. Get Me Out the Four Walls, they're another organisation, a charity that we work really closely with. Time Norfolk, Empower, so Ormiston families, we work with them as well. Yeah, we have links with various different organisations in the community, and we would signpost to those and many more.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, isn't it, knowing what's around in your local community, because I think it just gives you that opportunity to sort of link in, doesn't it, as a professional like both us, but also as a parent, who's receiving that type of support, to maybe just have a look at, sort of meeting other people, like you mentioned before, who are perhaps not, they're never going to have the exact example of an experience like you, but it can be very similar, isn't it, when you sort of get, as a peer support worker, sort of chatting to people who, have perhaps sort of had that, similar experience to yourself. And I think it's so important, isn't it, to just feel heard and listened to, and I suppose it's just that holding of hope, isn't it? Because I think, as a parent, I think there's a massive identity shift, isn't there, when you dependent on what particular pathway you might be receiving support from Lotus with.
Yeah.
It's, I think that's obviously something that does change, isn't it? And I think sort of reaching out to other organisations is such an important part of sort of regaining your sense of self again, isn't it? I think
it's very validating when you can speak to other people who have experienced something either the same or similar to you. It's because I think we spend a lot of time thinking, when you're struggling with something, that it's just you that's struggling. And as a peer support worker, one of the best things about, there are lots of good things about my job, but one of the best things is when you say to somebody, of course you're feeling the way that you're feeling, look at what's happened to you, of course you are. And when you see the relief in that person's face that actually what they're feeling is normal and it's okay and it's expected, and that it's welcome, you're allowed to feel that way, and actually, well, let's look at how we work through how you're feeling, but it's normal. The way that you're feeling is normal. And I remember somebody saying that to me once, and it was really quite game changing, because I really thought that I wasn't normal, that there's something wrong compared to everybody else. So yeah, it's really validating. And so if you can, sometimes you might just hear that from somebody one-to-one that you're working with, but if you can then reach out and go out into the community and meet other like-minded people that are experiencing the same thing, then it's really powerful. And it, you really forge really lovely connections with other people. Those organizations out in the community are doing a lot of really important, it seems, you might not realize how significant it is, but it's really significant, what you can get, the connections and the validation that you can get from going to these places.
Yeah, absolutely, I completely agree. And I think sometimes, for me, I think it was just finding people that you can really relate to on a personal level, not just professional, but on a personal level, where actually, like you mentioned, you feel so alone, but once you get talking about it, you're completely, really surprised at actually how many other people are going through similar circumstances to you, and being able to sort of openly talk about it. And I think we as a, we are talking about mental health, a lot more. And I think that sort of just then breaks down that stigma, doesn't it? And I feel that, we're getting, that way in sort of perinatal services, aren't we? Where, we are talking about it. With Lotus, if anybody's sort of listening, Bernie, what would you sort of say if you, to maybe parents who perhaps are sort of feeling quite overwhelmed, or they've had these experiences where they might need that sort of support? Is there any sort of, what would you sort of, I always feel like it's good to talk, speak to somebody. Is there, what sort of referral process do we have for Lotus?
I think for your first question, for what I would say to somebody who was feeling overwhelmed, parents that might be feeling overwhelmed, what I would say is that it's okay to find things hard sometimes, because they are hard sometimes. It's not always easy. It is overwhelming. If you could try not to project too far forward and try and stay in the present moment and think about when you're feeling really overwhelmed, asking yourself, what do I need right now? That's been a really helpful thing for me to do, is just because we project forward a lot. We think we don't like to not know what's happening next. The uncertainty makes us feel unsafe. So sometimes if I can just bring myself back to now and think, what do I need right now? And alongside with asking yourself, what do you need? Giving yourself permission to have it, to get it.
Definitely.
And asking for help if you need it, and because that's okay. And that there's no weakness in asking for support. And if linking into what you said about the referral process, if you're listening to this, or somebody who is potentially really struggling with their mental health, might need some support, you can self-refer into our service. So you can go onto the NSFT website, and we've got a page on there, so you can contact us there. You can email us straight into our office, or you can call. And you can also be referred by a professional. So if you went to your GP, or you spoke to your health visitor or your midwife, you can be referred by professional avenue as well, if that felt easier. But yeah, there's always somebody at the end of the phone if you called, and just even if you weren't sure whether that's the right service for you, the questions can be asked, and we can figure out. And if maybe our service isn't the right service, we can look at perhaps where might be more appropriate. So don't, even if you're not sure, still get in touch, because we can point you in the right direction if we're not the right service.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, isn't it? When, I suppose when you're feeling, overwhelmed, or feeling unwell with your own mental health, or, you've gone through, an experience, perhaps like loss or traumatic birth, that, sometimes you might not know really who or where to go to. So, like I say, I think it's really important just to sort of say, you can pick up that phone, and if it's not the right service for you, then we will then help to find the right one for you. And again, going back to those links within the community, isn't it? It's really to have those relationships with other organisations that we know that we can perhaps refer into, or offer that element of support. Or it's an amazing service, isn't it? It's well needed. Definitely.
It's a lovely service. I'm really proud to be working in a team like Lotus. I think 11 years ago, when I had my birth trauma perinatal service, there wasn't a perinatal service. Perinatal, I didn't even know what the word perinatal meant, and I think still lots of people aren't always familiar with that term. But if I had a service like that, then it might have saved me quite a few years struggling with trauma symptoms. It might have saved me money, because I had to access private support. There wasn't support widely available on the NHS like there is now for women in the perinatal period. So it's hugely important, and I feel really proud to be part of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel that, like yourself, having had that lived experience of loss, again, there was just nothing out there. There really wasn't. And going back to what you mentioned, you did feel so alone. And actually, if you knew of something or someone to go to, it would have just made that experience, a little bit more bearable, I suppose. But it was just, I did, there just wasn't, the services out there. I know when I had my own experience. I think our main sort of message is you have to reach out, don't you? I think, isn't it?
Yes.
It's so important just to reach out. We are lucky that we have got that element of being able to sort of self-refer, because it's daunting, isn't it, when you want, perhaps want to go to your GP, or go, have a look at a professional. I know very much, when professionals, after, it's like, well, I'm okay, and it's like deep down, you're not, but it's just finding, you find certain things in individual barriers. I think you have, don't you? Like my barrier to accessing services is going to be completely different to yours, Bernie, and I think it's just finding what, like going back, what do you need now? What is important to you right now? And it's very true. You often sort of think of ahead of yourself, isn't it? And it is sometimes just bringing yourself back in. And I suppose you could probably do that with a bit of mindfulness, couldn't you? I mean, I know
you really can. I do that. You could be. I might be washing up or something, and then and I don't have to take any extra time out of my day to sit and think about how I feel. I could just ask myself that when I'm making a cup of tea, or I'm washing up, or I'm getting dinner ready, or you can always say, what do I need right now, in your mind. And I think knowing that it's okay to give yourself what you need is a really big deal. And I think as a mother, for me, often everyone else's needs go before mine, and then it's only when I'm depleted that I then ask myself what I need, and that's too late. I should have been asking that before. And it's hard to remember to do that sometimes when you're overwhelmed with all the other things that running a home and having children might bring, but it's really important. And I think for me, if I'd been able to access something like our service, it would have just given me that space to really ask myself what I need, and to say, for a long time, I didn't realise that what I was experiencing were trauma symptoms. My idea of what trauma was very different to what I know it is now. So even just reaching out and saying, I'm feeling this way. I don't know if this is normal. I'm not sure if this is, what is this? And just to have somebody explain that to you and why you're feeling it makes sense then. It makes sense then, and you can understand, okay, that's why my body is feeling this way when I'm anxious, or that's why this particular thing feels like it's triggering me in some way, because I'm linking it back to this, or it's I think if you're not sure, and you feel that just something isn't right, then reach out to anybody, and just nothing bad will happen from coming in and saying, I think I need some help with something. That's it's harder, I think, to just keep trying to carry that and live with that and manage all the other things.
And like you say, when you feel that you are sort of like last in the queue of sort of getting that support and somebody else giving you that permission. I mean, I always makes me sort of chuckle when we're very much like a technological society now, that actually you wouldn't leave your phone with a red battery at 4%, would you? Straight away, put it on charge. And it's humans, I don't think we do that enough, do we? It's like,
no, we don't.
Actually, I need recharging. How am I going to do that, as a parent, when you're doing all the additional things, like you say, looking after children, trying to work, might have other responsibilities outside of work, but spinning all of those plates, and you often sort of think, actually, it's not sustainable, is it? It is that initial, at some point we've got to stop and think. And I like your way, sort of like, of mindfulness. I always felt was really difficult, but actually it's really important that it is something you can incorporate into your like everyday life, like you do your washing up. So I do it now a lot when I'm driving, instead of thinking, oh my goodness, it's another red light, I'm going to be late. I actually, if I'm at that red light, I will often go, oh wow, it looks a really nice day outside today. I can see a different shape in the clouds today. And actually it is trying to sort of incorporate that, isn't it, into your sort of daily living, and and washing up, the water's nice and warm, or I can smell the washing up liquid or something like that. It does take practice, doesn't it? But it
does take practice. I think we, and I do hear a lot of people say, I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to do these things. And And I was one of those people, and there are still days when I think I don't have time to think about what I need at the minute. We don't, it's something you're learning all the time. You're learning it, you're learning to do it, you're teaching yourself. But even, something, you've got to breathe. We're breathing all the time. So while I'm making a cup of tea, maybe I'll just slow my breathing down a little bit. Just really, really small things that are not taking up any more of your time. You're doing it already. Those little things can make a huge difference. It doesn't have to be really, really complicated looking after yourself. I think when you're overwhelmed, when somebody says you really need to look after yourself, that can be quite triggering in itself, because that you're well aware, that you're depleted, that you need a rest, but it's not always possible. And so if you can find those micro moments of, I'm just going to actually stick my head out the back door and just breathe in a little bit slower than I was for 5 minutes, or I'm hanging the washing out and I'm going to just slow my breathing down while I'm doing it, and I'm going to listen, I'm going to think of what things I can hear and look at what I can see. Doing those things, they're not really taxing. You can do that alongside whatever else it is that you're doing.
I suppose it makes hanging the washing out a bit more fun as well, doesn't it?
I do love hanging the washing out, I have to say.
It seems like it's a bit of a mundane job, another sort of
I love it.
A list of things that we have to do, but yeah, it is. That's a really important way to sort of look at it, isn't it? Incorporating, those sort of because we're doing it anyway, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're doing these little jobs throughout the day, and just having that time to actually, while you're doing it, stopping and having that time for ourselves. It's been lovely talking to you, Bernie.
You too.
And I hope for those of you that are listening, our main message, I think, today has been, reach out, talk to people, isn't it? I think it's hard, but it's so worthwhile, isn't it, when you sort of reach out and speak to people and find that you're not alone, as much as it may feel that you're alone. There's so many others who are experiencing similar situations like yourself, isn't it? And that you can pick up that telephone or look on the website, self-refer to Lotus. And is there anything that you wanted to sort of say to sort of end the podcast? Or
I think, really just reiterating what we've already said is that, reaching out and asking for help, there's no shame in that. Lots of people on the surface may look like they're doing things better than you, but I guarantee that they have got their own worries and struggles and things that they're struggling with. And for me as a peer support worker, having had my own lived experience and then being able to validate others is really powerful. And just to say as well that I get just as much from the people that I work with, that they feedback that they get from us, but I get such a lot from that. We can support each other, and that's really important. And just think about, trust your gut. That's my probably biggest thing, is believe what your gut's telling you. If you feel like you need some support, then you need some support, and just reach out. And our service is there alongside lots of others now. So that we want to help you, we want to support you.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
It's okay, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been really good. So thanks, Bernie. And thank you to everyone who might be listening to this podcast. Thank you very much, and take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to make sure you don't miss a future episode. Let us know what you thought of this episode by reaching out on social media. If you haven't already, listen back to previous episodes to hear some of the best mental health advice for you.